bit chilly.
And we are recording. Today I'm joined by Ruth and Rose from Fresh Air Fridays. Guys, do you want to do a quick introduction, tell us who you are and what Fresh Air Fridays is?
Yeah, I'll kick off because I kind of kicked it off. A number of years ago, our daughter developed anorexia. I was coaching. Our daughter developed anorexia. And that was a bit of a grim journey. And when I came out the other side, I discovered that the things that made a difference to keeping us mentally and emotionally fit were simple. They weren't easy, but they were simple. And I had a frustration that people didn't know how to keep themselves mentally and emotionally fit. And so, long story short, Fresh Air Fridays was my answer to that, which I did fairly badly for a couple of years on my own, and then met the lovely Rose. And we've been the most amazing business partners since then, and created something really effective together. So I'll hand you over to Rose.
Thanks, Ruth. Yes, and I was one of the initial facilitators when Ruth kind of said, "Oh, I got this idea. I've got this thing. Do you want to play?" And I was like, "Yeah, sounds okay. I'll do that. Sounds like a bit of fun." And that's how it started for me. Was a bit of fun. And I met Ruth not long after I'd had a diagnosis of breast cancer. And that journey for me was a wake-up call, and was the start of me really looking at my life and the development journey I'd taken up until then. I was working as a life coach, saw the way that mind, body and soul are connected, and became my kind of first client, if you like, with that. And so joining Fresh Air Fridays, when Ruth and I came together, then we blended all the things that we both learned on our individual journeys around, I call it self-development journey, but it's a well-being journey too. And so bringing all those things together has really supported us into create a package that works for people.
Okay. And I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here, because we didn't actually discuss whether I was going to say this, but it's just popped into my head. Give us an elevator pitch of what Fresh Air Fridays does.
Interestingly, we were literally talking about this before we came on the call, and most people know how to look after themselves physically. Whether or not they do, that's a whole other story. Far fewer people know how to look after themselves mentally and emotionally. Fresh Air Fridays helps you be mentally and emotionally fit so you can be happy. That's what we do.
That's a good one. And is this? I reckon we got to about the 5th floor. Then that was nice and succinct. I like that. You talk about a lot of people look after their body more than their mind. And how are you seeing the journey that people are taking? And have you seen? I suppose I've seen a shift in the way people look at things, or certainly over the last couple of years, and certainly since lockdown started, is that people are becoming more aware of their mental health and understanding that some of the emotions that they feel, they can't just be sort of brushed off and forgotten about, but actually looking inside yourself and identifying what issues you have and how you get over them. And I suppose that's why you created Fresh Air Fridays to start with. And are you seeing a more of a move to that as well?
Yeah, there were a couple of things that came up for me when you were speaking there, Jamie, is that, we've seen a huge rise in mental health issues, and it's great that people are being more open about this and getting that it's not, trying to get rid of the stigma, and that we all have mental health, and we're on the spectrum of whether we're working well at that time, at any particular time or not. But there's something about people seeking to have to try and fix how they feel rather than go back and deal with the issues that are actually causing the problem. So we've got a quote that we use on our Facebook group, I think it is that this huge rise in mental health issues is caused by the way we're living in the world, rather than by the way we're living in the world. And so what we seek to do is take people to a place where they start to form solutions of the way they're living, so that they don't get as burnt out as some of the things we're seeing. And certainly with lockdown, I think that's highlighted for a lot of people, with the fear around stress and anxiety have been elevated. And, and that's still there with the constant change. We're present to constant change. Sorry, I'm going on a bit here. Ruth, was there anything you wanted to kind of add to that?
No, I mean, I think the one thing about COVID from our point of view is people have, I don't know, to us it almost seems sudden. We've been talking about well-being since 2013 in this form, and all of a sudden COVID seems to have switched on the well-being switch, like we need to look after our well-being. But I think one of the challenges of COVID really is that we're after the effect, we're in reaction. And I think a lot of the work we do is about not trying to solve things once the horse is bolted, but let's take everybody back. Let's talk about health and well-being, not fixing people and solving a problem we have. So it's this step back to let's get the foundations of all of us being well and healthy in order that we can best go on and live our lives in the way that we want to. I could go on a lot, but I will stop there.
Can I add something to that? Because, I mean, obviously we have to start where we are. So we are in, the situation that we're in, and people are feeling the way that they're feeling and having the issues that they're having. So there's two parts to that, is that, yes, what we do will help people cope with the situation that they're actually in. And then we can look at developing they can look at how they put changes into their life to support them so that they don't get to that place again. So it's a two-pronged thing. It will work from either way. Obviously, we prefer to have the pre-thing rather than the once the horse is bolted.
Sorry, I think this is quite an important point too, in that for many people, when life isn't working for them, there's this tendency, because as a society we're fairly testosterone driven. I think there's this tendency that you just kind of stiff up a lip and you get on with it and you plow on against all this resistance. So really effective people can plow on and they can fight through the difficulty. What we see in our work is when we acknowledge that actually this is how I feel and this is the struggle I'm going through, and witness it and allow it, then the movement past it is a lot freer, it's a lot easier, it's not draining, it's not exhausting, it's not detrimental to our health. It can be a positive thing rather than a draining thing.
You mentioned there that a lot of this is to do with the way that we are living, and if you expand on that, are you talking about the Western way of living, the urbanized environment versus if you go back in our ancestry to a traditional sort of hunter-gatherer lifestyle? Is that sort of thing you were looking at, or?
Well, personally, I don't wish to go back to hunter-gathering, but that's not quite that far back. So, yeah. I was torn when you first said that, because yes, I do agree that the way we live in the Western world and are driven, but also the way we live in the Western world gives us lots of advantages as well. So taking that and not stepping over that. Yes, I'm sat here in my garden, which is a beautiful space to be. So we're very lucky here in that we have, running water, sanitation. So we have all those basic level foundational needs that people need to feel safe and secure, to be able to move up, some Maslow's hierarchy of needs there. Sorry, I've gone off the point. You will notice this with Ruth and I, we will go off the point. So we do think the nature is important for sure, and it brings around a huge amount of benefit. But perhaps just to separate those two things off a little bit in that the way we live has disconnected us from what matters to us. I think something that's come out from lockdown, you only have to look at social media posts. People have started to get present to the things that really matter to them. So spending time with their family, with their children, I know, reading, baking, being cut off from the way that they used to work, being stuck in a commute, and all that associated with it. I don't need to go into the detail on that. Has had people kind of go, oh, there's a different way of living. So there's something about us being able to marry both the advantages that we do have, and that many people, most people don't want to give those up. Perhaps finding a new way to live and work, which is, I think, something that's coming out of this. Sorry, off I go again.
No, yeah, I agree. I think and I've spoken about this on the podcast with other people as well, is that COVID has has forced change into our lives, and it's altered the paradigm effectively, because a lot of people would have been, going about their daily lives, and that was just the normal. That was how people lived. And, this change and the forcing of the change has made people realize, well, actually, the way I was living wasn't, set in stone. It's not a direct path. And there are alternative ways to live. It might not be as a radical change as COVID, or it might be more radical than the changes that have been made. But there are different ways of living. And that doesn't necessarily mean having to give up, the roof over your head and the technology and the, amenities that we have. But it does show people that actually, there's something else to this, and I might want to explore some other options.
And what was coming through as you were saying that for me, Jamie, was this element of choice, because I think it's very easy for people to live their life thinking they have no choice, thinking I've got to do it this way. This is the way my parents did it. This is the way all my friends and colleagues do it. So this is the way we do it. And I think the change has opened up a little gap. So actually there's always choice. I had a moment in lockdown going, oh, I've got to, I can't go the places I want to go. And then I stepped back and said, so what can I choose to do? And there's always choice. Sometimes it's between a rock and a hard place. But for me, knowing there's choice makes a difference. And my real hope, I think it's the reading, seeing the news, hearing the news is really dangerous, because let's not forget that journalists are I'm being a bit contentious here. Journalism is for selling papers. So let's not confuse what we read in the papers with what's actually going on. What we read in the papers is some of what's going on, but there's an awful lot of good going on. And I would hate us to be swung by negative press, because actually we can all make little choices that make a massive difference. So yeah, I hope COVID's brought choice for us all, actually, to kind of choose, how do we go forward from this point that works for us. The planet's really, well, if we don't get it right for the planet, it's not getting it right for us. So yeah. Yeah,
and I think with human nature is we seek comfort. Our brains are built for us to seek safety and comfort. And as we live in the modern world now, a lot of the risks and the dangerous elements that we would have faced, back going back thousands of years ago, are gone now. So, change is something that's actually quite difficult, because it means you have to actively change the way you do things, and there's going to be some pain in changing, whether that be some lifestyle changes, some business changes, or some changes elsewhere. So our brain sort of go back to, well, I could do that, but it's going to take some effort. So I'm going to sort of sit back and just carry on doing things the way I've always done. And from my point of view, I quite like change. One of my least favorite sayings in the world is, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Because it might not be broken, but there's almost always a slightly better way of doing it. And yeah, but I suppose for a lot of people that change is quite daunting, and it's quite difficult to take that first step. And that first step is often the hardest but the most rewarding, because then you see the light, you see the paradigm shift, and you can move on from there.
Were you itching to respond to that, Rose?
If you're itching, carry on.
Go.
Well, I was just yeah, a couple of things that came up to me as you were speaking there, Jamie. In that what's happened in the past few months, because there's always change. Change is happening constantly, and unless it's happening in something that is directly affecting you, then you don't notice it. What this situation has done is bring it to everyone's attention. It's like, oh wow, okay, so we've been thrust into it. And you're right, quite often taking the path of least resistance is a nice, easy way to live. And quite often, as human beings, we don't take action until we're forced into it. Ruth, with the situation with her daughter and the changes that she made there, me being diagnosed with breast cancer was a huge wake-up call. We have wake-up calls in our lives where things kind of are never going to be the same and force us into action. But when we take some time out to kind of reflect and pause, when we take a step away from our lives to give ourselves space to see what's actually happening, it gives us a safe space to actually make some small changes, perhaps. And you said about taking a step and you see something happening there. Quite often we just, in fact, I watched Frozen 2 the other day, and one of the things that came out of that, one of their messages was take the next right step. And the step that's most closest, in your direction of travel that you want to take. I wouldn't necessarily say the right step. Sometimes we don't know what the right step is. Taking a step in a direction will help. We'll have another step come up, or another blind alley, and you take another diversion. So yes, this idea of change is that if we don't take hold of our lives for ourselves in some way, it'll happen around us anyway, and something will go.
Yeah, I was reminded as you were speaking then, I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and somebody was saying that he put up a lecture that had health in the title. The major term in the title was health, and he had a pretty poor turnout. And a month later, he did another lecture, and cancer was the main subject of the lecture, and he had a massive turnout. And it just really made me realize, actually, most of us need a reason to go, actually, things have got to change. Most of us need that push. So people were prepared to go and learn something because they wanted to know how to move on from that, but they were less interested in how to support their health, which I just thought was interesting.
Yeah. And you talk a lot about well-being within Fresher Fridays and what you do. To you, what does well-being actually mean?
Well, to go back to what Ruth said at the beginning, so we've been talking about well-being for forever, and we take an holistic approach. It's the whole of us. It's not just one aspect, and trying to find a definition that fits everyone. The World Health Organization has got one definition. People talk about 5 pillars and include financial well-being. So, all of these things are important, but actually it's the whole of us. So when we are well in our lives, and our lives are working well, then we can be well. And we need tools to help us do that. Ruth and I were talking about this a little bit earlier, and you go to the gym to get fit, to get physically fit. What we talk about is, if you come to us, it'll help you get emotionally and mentally fit. And we need that whole aspect approach to, I guess, well-being encompasses our environment and the world we live in, and then how we are in it, and being able to adapt and be fluid, doing the movement here while I'm in there, in it, and bringing that mental, the word resilience crops up crops up a lot. But yeah, you go to the gym to get physically fit. You need to do something to help yourself get emotionally and mentally fit. And there's a spiritual aspect to this as well, which we haven't gone into. Whatever that means to you, not necessarily a religious belief, but a sense of perhaps belonging, connection, fulfilling your purpose in life. So if we look at kind of the 4 aspects that we think about making up well-being, it would be our physical and mental, emotional, and our spiritual, making up us, and then how we are in the world is how well we are. And that's not a definitive definition.
And I think the key thing in that is we don't believe in a one-size-fits-all.
Yes.
So what Rose and I hold very similar beliefs, and we do subtly different things to keep ourselves well, because we're different people. And the approach we take is we give people tools, we give people skills that allow them to explore in a safe space that's supported by us, but allow them to explore their solutions, which we then support them to put into place. So it's not a right, you do A, B, C, D, and you're mentally and emotionally well. We offer people a smorgasbord and say, you know, what tastes good to you? What works for you? What do you want a little bit more of? And that's much more effective, because, you know, I know for myself, when somebody tells me what to do, I'm not that interested in doing it. When I'm invited to, you know, what do I fancy doing? It's a whole different ball game.
Can I add a little bit more to that as well? And so exactly that. And these things change over time. The things I did to keep myself well, even 5 years ago, some of those are still valid. But I do other things as well. You know, we talk about, one of our themes is filling yourself up first. So taking care of yourself, and it means self-care. It means this, you know, taking care of yourself mentally and emotionally. But doing the things that you enjoy, doing the things that really, float your boat, they fill you up. And so we explore these themes regularly. And what we see is that things change and new things come in. So something that might have been working for me for, you know, a good long while, I want to try something else. So I let something drop out and I bring something new in. It's happened in lockdown. We've referred to that quite a bit, where people have got present to, oh, I like to go out walking. Oh goodness, I'd forgotten how lush this is. Lush, nice Welsh word coming in there. Or reading a book, or baking, or, you know, playing the piano, or all these things that we used to do when we were younger, that we've forgotten in our busyness, and bringing some of those things back in. But they can change over time. So kind of keeping that awareness going is important to us too.
And I can see you both outside recording this. But being outside is obviously an integral part to what you do with Fresh Air Fridays. Why for you is being outside important?
So for me, it happened by accident, I guess. So I've always walked. I've always enjoyed it, but not really. I wasn't kind of conscious of how important it was for me. And then when Catherine was poorly, I didn't realise it at the time, but after the event, when she and I reflected on our journey, we wrote a book about it, but when we reflected back on what had happened, we both saw that all the useful conversations we had when we were out walking. And Catherine described it as that when she was outside walking, the bullies in her head were just quiet. She had space to hear herself think again. And then when I took my coaching to another level and did more coaching qualifications, I started coaching people outside. And I'd been coaching people inside, and it, you know, had some great results. And then I took people outside and magic happened. And so it was just natural for me. You know, I felt better. The person I was coaching felt better. They had, the whole movement helps. One of the things that's said is as we walk, we've got all of our brain engaged all the time. But when we walk, we really actively have both sides of brains engaged, so we're much more creative. There's lots of research. So I did it instinctively, and then once we were in it and once we were doing it, then people started sending us all the research papers that said, you know what, being outside is really amazing. And I kind of went, yeah, I know, I experience it on a daily basis. But you know, the research now, trees release chemicals that calm us down. There's lots about our vision, how the soft focus we get outside is really useful for us. But more fundamentally than that, we evolved to be in nature. And what's happened in the last 200 years has happened so quickly in terms of evolution. And there are genuinely people now who spend their lives moving from concrete boxes, watching boxes, moving in tin boxes, you know, metal boxes. And there's just no nature in their lives. And it's real missing. And we see that when people, you know, just sitting, if you're fortunate enough to have a garden, and I know lots of people aren't, but if you can go to the local park, if you can just sit by a few pot plants, you will feel better. So it's an absolute fundamental. We believe that we need nature in our lives to feel mentally and emotionally well. And there's research studies to say patients in hospitals that have a view of the garden recover faster than those that don't. So there's just layers and layers of it. And yeah, so it's our prescription really. A little bit of nature every day makes a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, and just to add to that in terms of how it moves you, you know, when you change your physical space, then you can change your headspace. And being out in nature is we consider the best way of doing that. But just taking yourself outside and getting some fresh air, and there's lots more fresh air since there's been less traffic on the roads, and so that will help you, going back to this kind of mental and emotional fitness. Taking breaks, taking regular spaces. We talk about one of the things that came up from COVID, when we had to change the way we work, and we brought things online. And you know, being online was something that we wanted to take people away from. We wanted to get people away from their screens. And what we found is that in small doses, that we can give people some of the tools and the space that we provide. And breathing space is one of those sessions that we now do regularly, several days of the week online. And we wouldn't have thought of doing that before. So yes, we want to get outside, and there are things that we can do. If you know anyone watching this who's struggling to do that, get yourself into some nature with some pot plants, and using some of the tools that we give can support you as well.
Yeah, for myself, until I had my dog, we've had him 4 years now. I didn't really used to go for walks at all. I didn't used to enjoy it. You know, my outdoor time would be training on the rugby field or playing on a Saturday. But since then, and sort of, you know, when it first started, I felt like it was a bit of a chore. You know, I don't particularly like the rain, to be honest. I'm a bit of a wimp when it comes to the rain. But I'm starting to embrace it more now, and so I certainly feel more creative when I'm out walking. I also I do feel like conversations between people flow better. I'll often be out walking with my wife, and we'll sort of talk in depth about things more than what we would have if we were sitting in the house. Or if my brother-in-law comes with us, I'll debate him on certain subjects. So like we like debating each other because we've got slightly different viewpoints on things. So we've got that element, and then sometimes when I'm walking on my own, I bring out a passage from there's Aldous Huxley's book, The Island. And in that book, they talk about the yoga of everything. So it doesn't necessarily mean that yoga is just, you know, your standard, your stretching yoga. What it means is when you are, you know, walking out in nature, is that you really focus on what's around you. You focus on how your body feels. You focus on how your foot feels when it hits the floor, how your hand feels against touching a tree, and that sort of that really sort of relaxes me, because you're completely in the moment. And so I find there's different elements to it. There's that element, and then there's the creative and more sort of in-depth conversation element as well. But overall, I mean, when I get back from a walk, I always feel better than when I first started, regardless of whether it's raining or not.
Couple of things there. I mean, you've described perfectly one of the mindfulness practices that we support people to do when they come on live sessions with us, and actually on our audio program as well. So absolutely, that being present in nature is hugely valuable, and the practicing that, for me, what that's done is, because I practice that kind of thing regularly, I find that in my daily life, the practice of that mindful attention, which I adore doing it in nature, means that I'm much more aware of my daily life. So in my working life, something might occur, something might be happening, and I'm just aware of what's going on. So I notice that things are off. You know, if something's not working, rather than me ploughing on, I notice that something's not working. So I become much more effective from that mindful awareness. So brilliant to do it in nature, and that tracks across to my working life and my relationships and all that. Completely agree with you about a lot of what we do is about communication, both with ourselves and with other people. And there is no better way to have an important conversation than out walking, because of all the things you've said about your brain. You're not eyeballing somebody. You can't help but get in. As a coach, you learn to fall into rapport with somebody. That means kind of being with their body movements and their breathing and all that. And you do that by accident. When you're walking with somebody, you naturally fall into rapport. You have to work quite hard not to. So if you want to upset them, you need to work hard at not falling into rapport. So you get that rapport, and then the communication flows really helpfully. And then the last thing, you talk about the rain. I was just saying to Jamie before we started recording this, I've got a quote on the back of my office door that says, "It's not about waiting for the storm to pass, it's about learning to dance in the rain." For us, the rain's a real metaphor, because people always say to us, what happens if it rains? Well, we want to help you to keep walking when it rains, because it is going to rain in your life. You know, it's just, we all have good bits and we all have less, bits that we perhaps wouldn't choose. So there will be tough bits in our lives. That doesn't mean we have to stop walking. It doesn't mean we can't experience joy in that. And we want to support you to keep walking. So yeah, thank you for all those things, Jamie.
I know you've mentioned breathing space, and that from COVID you've had to shift to more of an online presence. I know I took part in one of the sessions a couple of weeks ago, and sorry I haven't been on since. I do need to make them more regular in my day, because in my week, because after that one session, a 20-minute session at 12 o'clock, I think it was Wednesday, and I was a little bit stressed going into it, a lot of work on, but actually taking that 20 minutes out of my day to spend doing the session with you guys, the rest of my day was far more productive then, because I just felt more relaxed. The to-do list that I had in front of me before the session, which seemed daunting, then felt like, okay, I can just tick these off, I can just get through them. Do you want to give a little bit more information about that, how to find it, where it is?
Well, first of all, thank you, Jamie. I mean, you've just said, beautifully, why it matters that people do this, and it was a wry smile in terms of, I haven't been back yet because I've been busy and I need to make the time for it. Is that quite often the things that we give people to do are simple to do, and it doesn't make it necessarily easy, because we've got busy lives, we've got all this stuff going on, and so putting some time in, putting some things in the diary to have a regular practice are the things that we know make a difference over the long term. And sorry, I haven't answered your question. I will answer your question. But I'm reminded of something that Ruth said, using the gym analogy again, is that if you go to the gym and you use a machine for a week or so, you notice the results of that really quickly. And it's the same with breathing space and the practices we used on there. So you will feel better from doing it once, but actually how you stay fit, if you like, is that regular practice and doing it over time. And And that's what makes a difference. So that, yes, you will feel better, but what will have you stay fit in the long term is doing it regularly. And so to try and help you do it regularly, we've got them running on various days of the week. Most weekdays now they're 12 o'clock, and we've got an early morning on Monday and 8 a.m. and a 7:30 on a Tuesday and a 5:30 on the Thursday. All the details of those are on the website, freshairfridays.co.uk. And if you look at breathing space, that'll come up. And you just click on the link on that from that page. We want to keep it really simple for people to do. So get one in your diary, Jamie.
I will absolutely. And at the moment they're running free of charge for anyone who wants to take part.
They will always run free of charge. We just got from this, I don't know, that people who were not used to doing this. So if you're used to this kind of doing a breathing exercises or going out and practicing some mindfulness, you know the benefits, and so we can easily reach those people. But the breathing space gives people who perhaps haven't tried these as well to dip their toe in and kind of go, oh, okay, that's what this is about, and just try it. So that's what we'd invite you to do, is to pop on to a breathing space, see what you can take from it. Everything we do on there is designed to be easy to do in your daily life. So you can, if you just take one thing from there, you'll find it beneficial. Did I miss anything, Ruth?
No, I mean, it's just an open invitation. I think that the riskiest thing we've done is make them free, because my concern in making them free is people won't value them. If you did everything we talk about on a breathing space regularly, you would get mentally and emotionally fitter, without a doubt. And we're there and we're free to do that particular program, to come on those sessions. So yeah, diarise it and come and try it, and share it widely, because it's a real gift to the people you know as well.
Yeah, I'll put the link to the link to the website in the bio of the video when it goes up.
Lovely, thanks.
Beautiful, thank you.
So I know we talked about mindfulness a bit there. Mindfulness is a word which probably 10 years ago, very, very little people would have heard of. With the advent of, there's a few mindfulness apps now available. But I still think, there's a misunderstanding about what it actually is. Can you sort of give us an idea of what mindfulness is for you?
I was trying to remember the exact words from John Kabat-Zinn, but I'm probably not going to get that right, so I won't try. I'll paraphrase. It's about being in the moment. So bringing your whole self to whatever is happening right now. Now you'll see it in with sportsmen, and you'll probably notice it. People who are unfamiliar with it. When you've got that times when something you really love doing and you're completely engrossed in it, you're there. It could be a carpenter, a master carpenter, a master joiner, carving out a piece of wood, or Djokovic when he's serving. Those people are completely focused on what it is that they're doing, and that's mindfulness, I suppose. In a moment, is being completely present to what's happening. You can do that as a practice, so bringing your focus to either your breath, or perhaps counting, or even, I've got a beautiful rose bush behind the side of me here, looking at the rose bush and just noticing every aspect of it, bringing your whole self to that focus, letting go of any judgments that come in. Quite often what happens when we start to practice mindfulness, we notice lots of thoughts. So I'll look at that rose bush and go, oh, that's a beautiful petal. Oh, that one's getting a bit jaded now. So I've got these judgments and thoughts popping in. And we do that automatically. We do that all the time. It's quite natural. Our brains are there to think, and that's what they do. So all there is, John Kabat-Zinn talks about letting go of judgment, is that whenever you notice the thoughts coming in that are not the focus of what you're focusing on, you just notice them and let them go. Sorry, this was quite a long-winded one, but I wanted to give you some examples so that people can kind of perhaps hear it for themselves. Ruth's good at simplifying everything I've said, so perhaps there's something that you'd like to add, Ruth.
Well, no, I just think so. I often hear people telling me that they can't do meditation. So for me, meditation is a formal practice of mindfulness. So being present somewhere, as you described when you're out walking, I kind of have that as a bit of an informal practice, kind of bordering between the two. I think when you have a sitting practice and you're choosing to focus on something that some people describe as meditation, others describe as mindfulness, it's the same thing. It's a practicing focusing. And people say I can't do that because my mind's just full of stuff. Do you know what? Everybody's mind's full of stuff. The difference between somebody who's practiced in the art of it and somebody who isn't is that the more practiced you are, you tend to notice faster that you're thinking, and then you can put down the thinking and bring yourself back to whatever you're focusing on. Oh, there are still times when I might sit in a meditative practice, counting or breath or watching my breath, and I've written my shopping list and I've planned my day, and then I go, oh, I'm meditating, and I just bring myself back. But the important thing about it is because it then goes into the so what, why would you? And I was talking to a client the other day, and he described that his meditation practice, he described exactly my experience of it. And he said, having a meditation practice over a period of time, what it's done for him is it's opened a little gap in his experience of life. So something happens, and rather than him just going into reaction, rather him just, maybe his teenage son's been rude to him, and rather than him going instantly into reaction, he's got this moment's pause that allows his brain to go, oh, how do I want to respond? And there are so many benefits. I mean, we could talk for I'm conscious of how long we've been talking, and we could talk for another hour about the benefits of mindfulness. But one of the key things for us is that it moves us from reaction in our lives, so reacting to what's happening to us, to choosing how we respond. And that means for me that I can create the life I want. Instead of shouting at my kids or getting cross with somebody, I can go, oh, what's going on for them at the moment that they might have said that? How do I want to support them to do stuff? So yeah, it's massive, and we could go on. So those are kind of two perspectives on it, but well worth exploring.
Yeah, and sorry, Rose, go on.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, we talk about the awareness that comes from having a mindfulness practice underpins everything we do, because just as Ruth said there, once you start to get that awareness, it's not just in you notice the relationships where you can react and respond, but you start to tune into you, and you notice the things that don't work for you. You notice the things that are not happiness in your life, and that gives you an opportunity to change them and to go, oh, okay, this really isn't working for me now. And it's that it gives you the opportunity to do something little. Before you're aware of something, you can't do anything, because it's just like, there's a little ditty, this is possibly unpolitically correct, so feel free to get it. But see the happy moron, he doesn't give a damn. I wish I were a moron. My God, perhaps I am. And so that awareness, once we know something, then we can do something with it. When we're unaware of it, there's nothing to do.
Yeah. When you mentioned the exercise part of it, so Djokovic serving, or I know that it's sort of like a flow state you enter, so that it becomes, this is for high level athletes, it becomes an unconscious movement of the body, because they're so in tune with what they're doing. And rock climbers particularly have that, particularly the guys without the ropes, the crazy ones who sort of free solo. And for me, a part of mindfulness, I've been doing mindfulness through exercise and training longer than I knew what mindfulness actually was. So if I'm at the end of a training session and I am blowing, and I know I've got a few reps left to do on something, you know, my focus is entirely on that, entirely on getting that done. And there's nothing else in my head at that point. So that is sort of the basis of it. And then, you know, like you said, as you develop that can then help you in other aspects of your life, which I certainly see coming through as well. You mentioned in the sort of the notes and the discussions we had beforehand as well, there's a couple of other sort of phrases like gratitude, communication that are particularly important to what you do. You want to sort of expand on those as well?
So I think we've touched a bit on the communication. There are a couple of things there. We talk, we encourage people how to listen. I think one of the things that's missing in many interactions with people is that we don't listen enough, and we talk about listening without commentary for us, which again is a bit of a mindfulness practice. It's about listening without saying something. So when somebody's speaking to you, just really hearing them. And I know in my mind, you know, I care about people. So my mind's really good at going, oh, what they need to do. My mind's good at going off and trying to fix it for somebody else. What I experience is that when I just listen to people and I give them the space to hear themselves as well as me hearing them, mostly people come to their own conclusions, which are much more effective than any advice I could give them. So that's a key thing about communication, and something we work with a lot. And so that's just one of our themes that we explore. And another one is gratitude, and we practice gratitude in everything we do. And I heard a quote the other day from Eckhart Tolle, and he said, gratitude is the foundation of abundance. When we start to notice what is working, our brains are problem solvers. Our brains, in order for us to survive historically, so, you know, when back in the day when we were chased by saber-toothed tigers, our brains needed to solve the problems of survival all the time. We don't need to solve problems of survival all the time now, but our brains still seek out problems. So we tend to notice what hasn't been done at the end of the day, rather than the 10 things you've ticked off your list. You notice the 3 that didn't get done. Rather than noticing, I don't know, I can't think of another example, but we tend to always notice what's not working rather than what is. When we start to practice gratitude, we start to notice what is working. So even if life is feeling a bit ropey at this moment in time, noticing one thing, the rose in your garden, a nice cup of tea, the fact that your neighbor waved at you when they walked past. And when we start to see all the things that are working, all the things that we have done, you know, perhaps noticing maybe you don't like yourself very much. Find one thing about yourself that you do like, and notice that one thing. Put a bit of attention on the stuff that works, and we start to notice how abundant we are. And it's an absolute game changer, particularly if people are struggling with their mental health. Noticing the stuff that's working. It's one of those things that sounds so simple. It's really easy to chuck it out and go, that can't work. And in my work, I see that it's a great starting point for anybody. And making it a practical habit can be really helpful. So at the end of the day, writing down 2 or 3 things that you're really grateful for the day, or when you wake up in the morning, noticing 2 or 3 things that you're really grateful for from yesterday, just sets you up and starts to train your brain to notice the abundance in your life rather than the lack. Yeah. So yeah, both important to us. Is there anything you want to add there, Rose?
Yeah, just as you were speaking there, talking about the listening without commentary, there's so much going on in the world at the moment, and yeah, so much going on in the world at the moment. It's kind of a silly thing to say, but you know, I'm reminded of, you know, Black Lives Matter, and one of the things that I've been seeking to do to be anti-racist rather than an ally or against racism is to take issue with, instead of scrolling through social media and kind of ignoring the posts that, you know, just are a little bit on the dodgy side, I've started answering those. And the listening without commentary has been so important with that, because what I've sought to do is to understand where people are coming from in that, in their comment, and kind of asking about, you know, what's their point of view, why have they got that point of view, where is it coming from, you know, before kind of putting my own 2 pennies worth in and going, well, you shouldn't think like that, you should be doing, you know, that's wrong. Because as soon as I start telling somebody that they're wrong, you know, the defenses come up. You know, I can see it in my interactions with my family. You know, you can see it close to home, and this is magnified out in the world at the moment. Everyone has an opinion. They're always different to somebody else's. We may have some that are kind of, you know, in the same vein, but we think differently. And if we can seek to understand, as Stephen Covey said, then we have an opportunity to move on. And so the listening without commentary comes into not just our programs, but it teaches people to use that in their daily lives, and that can work. Well, you know, it's a little thing that I'm doing that I hope will make a difference. Who knows?
Little differences like that would make a massive difference to the way the world works. If everybody took the time to understand where somebody else's viewpoint was coming from, rather than just going, no, you're wrong, I'm right, then, you know, most of the arguments that we're having would turn into debate, and out of debate comes progress. And it's sort of that what you said reminds me of a quote that I try and live my life by is, always assume the person you're speaking to knows something you don't. So always assume that, always having the opinion, and not the opinion, sorry, always listening to what they've got to say, because they've had a different experience in life to you, and then their experience can help you enrich your understanding of the world. I think if more people had a way of communicating with others like that, then a lot of these, you know, arguments just, you know, wouldn't be happening right now.
And I guess that's why we believe it's important that people are mentally and emotionally fit, because when you are, you could take that step back, and, you know, you're not triggered by something somebody said, you know, coming as a real assault on you, who you are as a person. If they attack my viewpoint, it means that if I'm wrong about that, I'm wrong about everything. Oh my goodness, you know. So that's, I guess, coming back to where we came in, is when we are mentally and emotionally fit, we can cope with these things, and we can show up in the world the way we wish to, and hopefully make a difference.
Yeah, and well, especially if you're going down the rabbit hole of commenting on social media on some controversial issues, then you certainly have to have you know, a strong foundation for your mental health, because, you know, that can have a real impact on it, especially when everything coming at you is negative, and people do revert to personal attacks where it's absolutely not needed. So yeah, I suppose if you're going to go down that route, make sure you're prepared for it before you do it.
I only do it in small doses, because I did notice, you know, because of course if you start commenting on some things, you start seeing more of those things.
Yeah.
And there was a moment last week when I just thought, oh, you know, I felt despair of like, oh my goodness, this is, and it's like, okay, well, this is just a little sample of the things that you're getting. Let's take a step away. So knowing when to stop, you know, and again, that awareness of knowing, oh, actually, this is affecting me now. I need to take a step away. And thankfully, I'm in a position where I can do that. There are other people who are not in a position where they can take themselves away. So the more we can do, the more we can help the people who can't.
Yeah. So we've been going now for, I think, almost an hour. Got the record so far for the longest recording, right? I'll send you a little trophy, I think. So just to wrap it up, Fresh Air Fridays, we've talked about the foundation of why you do what you do and what you do. So if if somebody wanted to, if an individual or a business, because I know you have different programs, what sort of programs have you got available to people? How do they get in touch with you, and how does taking you on as coaches work?
Do you want me to answer that, or do
Yeah, go on, you start.
So breathing spaces is there, so you can get a sense of us. Some real tools that we share in all our programs. So the first port of call, I would say, come and try breathing space. We then run 12 session programs, and they run over different periods of time depending what you want, which are self-development programs that explore a whole range of themes that address all the things that will have you mentally and emotionally fit. So we talked about some, we talked about gratitude, we talked about communication skills, and we do them over a period of time so that you build it as a habit, you build the muscle. You know, we've talked about the repetition. And we run those for individuals, and we run those for organizations, and we can run those in England at the moment. We can run them in the flesh. We're hoping that we'll be able to bring them back in Wales fairly soon, but we also run them all virtually. So they run via an audio program, which you can do for yourself outside, with an attached coaching program. So there's some virtual support. So both of those are really relevant. And it's a journey, and what we see for ourselves is, you know, we've done these programs over and over again, and it's like the Buddhist saying, you never stand in the same river twice. When you come back and re-explore it, you're a different person, so it takes you to a different level. So yeah, that's the journey really. We've got, the book is about to go on the website, so we have got a book coming shortly, both in hard copy and as an ebook. But yeah, first step really is go and try the breathing spaces. Is there anything you want to add to any of that, Rose?
No, that's perfect, as usual.
Yeah, and if anyone out there listening hasn't tried breathing space, wants to get a flavour for what Ruth and Rose can do, have a look on the website and get involved in one of the sessions, and then you'll see the type of work that they do. So guys, so thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah, appreciate the time and the topics we've covered. I'm sure we could have gone on for hours and hours longer.
We're very proud of the longest session. It wasn't our intention, sorry.
I'll have to make it a one of the challenges for someone else to come on to see if they can beat it.
Christmas special.
Yeah. So if you're watching this about now, you'll have some buttons on the screen. If you like this content, please subscribe to get notified when other videos are coming up. Guys, thanks again for joining me, and I'll see you again.
Thanks very much,
Thanks,
Jamie.
Jamie.
Take care. Bye.
Take care.
The Zoom wave.